This is the Haulin Assets podcast, where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode 158 of the Haulin Assets podcast. I am Craig, and over there he is Chris. Chris, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Pretty well. I'm exhausted. I just got back I went to see the A's play in the Coliseum for the first and last time before their stadium gets torn down and they have to move. So that was really, really fun. Awful stadium, fun trip, fun game.
Good reason they're tearing it down.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's terrible. But hey, it's a piece of baseball history, so I had to go see it.
Cool.
And now I'm back and ready to talk trucks. How have you been?
Let's do it. Good. Yeah, it's been kind of a normal summer, nothing super spectacular going on.
Working too hard and
working too much and trying to play too hard. Not getting any sleep because nobody has to go to school, so everybody but me stays up. Well, they make me stay up later than I normally would like to.
I know the feeling. All right. So, Chris, before we get started, let's remind everybody to go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com for the full show notes, especially on episodes like this. If you're not familiar yet, these financials episodes, they do come with accompanying documents. So the profit and loss statement that we reference, you can actually find that there and follow along, preferably not while you're driving, but once you're done, if you want to follow along and see what Haulin Assets P&L statements look like, you can do that there at HaulinAssetsLLC.com. You can also go to MotorCarrierHQ.com. If you want the kind of concierge treatment, get on the phone with somebody who can help you to make that transition from employee to owner operator and beyond. But now there's one more to add to the list. As you all heard last time around, we've got Haulin Assets Academy.com. Am I right? Yeah, it's Haulin Assets Academy, no G, Haulin Assets Academy.com, where you can kind of do the self-guided version of that, right? It's Chris, am I right in describing it as the distilled wisdom of what we've been doing for the last 5 years in course form?
Yeah, course form and more in depth than what the actual podcast covers. Plus, there's some additional tools and things you can use to kind of help you along your way. Take for example the dispatching model, how to find loads. I've basically, the course is intended to make it so you can go from almost zero knowledge in that area to what would normally take you through experience 6 months to get to, you can do that in the matter of, days, if not weeks.
Right.
Condenses that learning. And so, for the price that you pay, it will put you light years ahead of where you would be otherwise. So really good product.
Awesome. So HaulinAssetsAcademy.com is where you can find a few different courses, general overview, dispatching. And what was the other one? It was numbers accounting, right?
Bookkeeping.
Yep. So that's all there. Go check it out. Now then, Chris, we're talking today about June 2024 financials. We've had a few We've had a few months of, hey, things are looking up. Sometimes a little less up than others, but at least it's not 2023 anymore. You want to give us a preview before we get to the numbers? How happy are we?
This June was definitely better than last June, but last June was awful.
I think we'll get there. Any other stories from the road before we do numbers?
I have a couple things. Not so much me from the road, but so this last weekend I was on call, so I was dealing with all the challenges and issues that were happening, and I had a couple things that were a little bit more interesting than normal. The first one was a company dropped a load on us. So that kind of really ticked me off. Like, you get dropped every once in a while for different things, but this is a situation where before 7:00 in the morning on Saturday, he says, "Hey, we're dropping you from the load. Your truck's not empty. You're not taking it." So this was before 7. Our truck at the time was being actively unloaded. The appointment time for the next shipper was not till 11:00 in the morning. So, I mean, they dropped it more than 4 hours prior to the appointment time, which kind of made me mad. And usually if they order a truck and don't use you, you get paid. It's an acronym, TONU, truck ordered, not used, TONU. You hear people refer it to in different ways, but like they refused to pay us that, which to me, like they ordered us, they didn't give us a chance. Our truck could have arrived easily on time. Like it was unloaded with plenty of time. And to me, that's excessive. 4 hours before the appointment time, you're canceling us because our truck isn't empty yet. I can understand a couple of hours, but this was a situation where I was just like, I don't like it. It doesn't feel right to me that we got canceled on that load. So then I have to scramble, find a new load for a truck on a Saturday, which is never easy. And so just kind of for the principle, like I kind of almost wanted to take them to court just to get that $250 TONU, because there's nothing in their contract that says you have to be empty by a certain amount of time. Like that's not the normal business practice to cancel a load that far in advance.
Right. Well, I'm sure with all of the extra time you've got, small claims court, that would be a good use.
That's kind of the problem. Like it doesn't make sense time-wise. Absolutely. It'd be a principle-based thing. So, I'd love to get other people's opinions on, okay, when, like, am I being ridiculous here? Like, is that
right?
Do they have the right to cancel me that far in advance? Or am I in the right? That's not fair.
Yeah. And okay, so yeah, I agree. I would love to hear that. Hit the YouTube comments, the Facebook comments, wherever you want to comment. I'd be interested to hear, as someone on the outside looking into the industry, what people say about that. And then you told me there was another thing about onions.
Yeah.
It's like, welcome to Salt Lake. People are going to be hauling onions, and somebody.
Yeah, we were hauling a load of onions. The onions deliver. Our driver goes to pick up the next load. They reject the trailer because the onions smell. And that's not terribly unusual. I mean, that happens. And so she goes and gets the trailer washed out and comes back, and they rejected her again. So the second rejection after a washout is, I can't remember ever having that happen before. And so I want to get other people's ideas of what kind of things do you do to get rid of onion smell in your trailer, or maybe not just onions, but there's other things that can make a trailer smell. So what do you do to get rid of that bad smell? In the past, here's a couple things that I've used. I've used coffee grounds.
Sure.
Like if you'll lay coffee grounds on the floor, let it sit overnight, blow all that out. Usually that absorbs the smell and it's just fine. I've also heard people say powdered grape juice.
Powdered grape juice.
I've never tried that one.
Interesting.
But they say
so you're trying to get it out of the floorboards?
Yeah. Well, it's not floor. It's a metal floor.
Oh, okay. Right.
So you've got metal floor and you've got, kind of this plastic walls ceiling. But it'll like that onion smell will linger. But
white vinegar,
like just spray it down or pour it down? Or?
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't want to get excessive because then you've got a vinegar smell left over, but that's something that can neutralize a lot of stuff, right? Even baking soda and vinegar in some mixture and then scrub down a little spray down with that. That might work. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear people's ideas. So on YouTube or wherever you're listening, leave a comment. Let us know what kind of tricks you're using to improve smell in bad trailers. Especially something they can use.
Tell
quick.
your drivers to shower, Chris.
I don't think that's it. Yeah, I've never heard anybody complain about a BO smell in the trailer. It's usually some other kind of product. So, yeah, give us some ideas, especially if it's something that can be used and like will solve the problem quickly.
Right.
Like the coffee grounds, it essentially takes overnight.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah. Hit us up again. YouTube, Facebook, wherever you want to comment. All right. Let's get to some numbers, Chris. June. Are you happy with June? How did it go? And let's get into some specifics.
Happy. Yes and no. We're not where we want to be.
Okay.
So I'm not happy until we get to the point where like really profitable and can, start making some money, above and beyond, what we've been doing. But we're much better off this June than we were last June. So that really makes me happy. So I guess you could say I'm happy, but I'm definitely not satisfied. Does that
That's understandable, I suppose. No, I get it. So let's get into the numbers then. The total miles run for 11 trucks, hopefully, and I think we're going to get to that. But what's our total miles?
118,237, which is better than we have been the last several months. We did get the last truck filled with a driver about halfway through the month, so that's reflected there in those miles. But I think we're still about 10,000 miles short of our high of where we've been. But
with 11 trucks.
Yeah, 120,000 miles essentially with 11 trucks is not bad.
So I ran that through. I just divided it by 10.5, right? So half the month for that truck. And I came out with 11,261 per truck.
Yeah.
That's not too bad.
Not too bad.
Yeah. It's up over 11. So that's looking good. Deadhead miles?
Deadhead miles were 8,806.
Okay.
So that's about 7.5%, which is actually creeping up a little bit from where it has been, which I'm expecting. One of our main shippers is shipping out of a different location during the summer that requires a significant amount of deadhead. So I think it'll actually creep up even more in July's number. So we'll see. But it's not bad because we get, decently compensated for those extra deadhead miles. So it's not, it's more, but it's not a bad
It's not
thing.
Unmanageable.
Yeah.
When you say you get compensated, do they up your rate? Do they compensate you directly for the deadhead miles and then compensate you for the load itself? Or do they kind of work that all into the same rate?
It kind of works all into the same rate, but the rate's definitely higher than it would be otherwise. And so it essentially, it's compensating for those deadhead miles.
And you said this is a direct shipper that's doing this? See, and that's a great illustration of what you've been talking about for years, wanting to cultivate those direct shipper relationships, where once you prove to them that, hey, we're a reliable company, we've got your back, we're going to be on time, et cetera, they move locations, but they don't move shipping companies yet, right? They're still calling you guys and saying, hey, you're our guys because we know we can rely on you, right?
Yep. Yeah, and that's a great point. And then also, the kind of thing that goes along with that is if those loads were being managed by a broker, the broker guaranteed
would switch.
They'd be keeping they'd be asking for that extra rate, but
keeping
guaranteed they'd be keeping a lot of, if not all of that difference, rather than passing it on to the carrier. And so the carriers kind of get screwed. And so that's why, again, it's always best to, as much as you can, work directly with shippers.
Okay. All right. So total miles then, 118 gives us a total revenue of how much?
Before we move on to total revenue.
What else do you
So
got?
there's one more thing that, if you remember last month when I was talking about the deadhead miles, I said that I didn't have 100% confidence in it. Well, I figured out what was going on.
Okay.
And in the TMS system that we used, when you cancel a load, like the one I was talking about today, the load got canceled on us. When you canceled the load, it would not calculate the deadhead miles correctly. It would, instead of kind of creating a new start point based on the new load that you've got, it would actually revert clear back to the start point of the previous load. And so I'd get some situations where instead of having 100 miles of deadhead, it'd show 800 miles of deadhead.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, that's obviously not accurate. So I actually reached out to the developers on our TMS system, pointed that out to them, and they said that they didn't realize that and have fixed it. And we'll see in July's numbers if that actually holds true.
I cannot tell you, Chris, how unbelievably frustrating and annoying it is when spreadsheets end up mattering. So well done with your spreadsheets and your magic and your catching developer errors. All right. So now do we get to talk about revenue?
Now we can talk about revenue.
Okay, where are we at?
We finished the month with $244,523.12.
Which comes out to just over $23,000 per truck. I'm only saying that just because
using math.
I find it interesting. Yeah. I like to see kind of how it breaks down per truck. And now that I think about it, knowing that number, then you could know which trucks or drivers are the outliers and aren't quite pulling that weight. Yep. Anyway, all right. So to speak, dang it, accidental puns. okay. So total revenue then was 244,500, we'll call it, which gives us an all-in rate per mile of
$2.07, which is a drop from last month. We were, I think, 218 last month, and so it is what it is. It's summertime. Like typically, it seems like rates drop a little bit in the summer, but hopefully not as bad as they were last summer.
Okay, so 207. Hopefully that'll pick up as the summer winds down, and we get into, back to school and holidays and all that stuff. So we'll see. But 207, that means profit of...
The profit was $23,521.93, which is actually the second best of the year.
Okay. But you're not satisfied because who likes profit? Profit sucks, right, Chris?
Yeah. Well, if you remember right, when we talked a little bit about, we've talked about this before, we're really not cash flow positive until we're around $30,000 in profit. So we're not there. I really want to get up to hopefully consistently at some point churning out $50,000 a month in profit. And we're obviously a long ways away from that, but it is a number I think we can reach, especially when the market gets decent. But if you look at one of the things that really has me excited about the numbers this year is the difference between this June and last June. So last June, we were over at $23,000 in the negative.
Right.
This June, over $23,000 in the positive. So it was almost a $47,000 swing from last June to this June, which is huge.
Yeah, obviously. That's super satisfying.
Yeah.
Of course. Okay, excellent. Anything else you wanted to say on the kind of overall numbers before we look at anything, individual or more specific?
Just a couple of things. If we can kind of continue this trend, if you remember right, June, July, August, September of last year were all terrible.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So if we can kind of continue this trend of being in the black and hopefully, somewhat strongly in the black, like every month that this happens, I'm going to feel more and more confident that the market's turning a little bit. Still, obviously we've had a pretty decent streak of numbers in the black, not where we want them to be, but it's a lot better than the negatives that we were getting all of last summer.
Right.
So again, every month that we continue to do this, I'm feeling more and more confident that the market's getting better.
Okay. So you say 30,000 at your current number of trucks would be satisfactory. 50 would make you happy, especially if that's happening consistently. Now I'm casting my mind back a couple of years when you guys went on the truck buying spree.
Yeah.
And got up to 11 trucks and then went, whoa. Right. The market isn't helping us out. The rates aren't good enough. We can't sustain growing like this. So you hit the brakes on that. Do you want to continue growing as you see those numbers look better consistently? And where would you start to consider that? It's like, hey, if we're hitting 30 for 6 months in a row, great, let's go get some more trucks. Or do you want to get up to that 50 before you start considering growth?
I would definitely get up to that 50 before we start considering that growth. Do we want to grow again? Yes. I don't see that happening anytime this year. I would be surprised, possibly more towards the latter half of next year. But even at that, I'd be a little bit surprised. I kind of, at this point, more interested in kind of paying off some debt and just kind of
getting more established,
getting a little bit more established, a little better foothold. There are some things that could happen that could make me change my mind with that, but I think it's highly unlikely.
Okay. Yeah. Just a little question I had. Okay. So here's a specific question as we dive in. You mentioned the rate per mile is lower, but the profit is higher. Is it just because of the miles run with the extra truck? What happened? Why are the numbers shaking out the way that they are?
That's a really good question. The biggest reason, if you think about it, last month there were 5 payrolls, so our payroll was a decent amount higher. So that's a big chunk of why we have a lower rate per mile, but are more profitable this month. And I also kind of looked through the P&L, and the P&L, to be honest with you, is kind of bland for the most part. Nothing that really sticks out. But there are quite a few little things that kind of have added up. Like our tolls are lower. Our operations pay was a little bit lower. There were a handful of other things that just, $1,000 here, $1,000 there kind of added up to help make that that difference and that swing in being a little bit more profitable.
Okay. Yeah. What about fuel? You say that the P&L is pretty bland. Is there anything about fuel? Because I know that's been coming down as a percentage of revenue. Fuel costs have been coming down. Has that held?
So good question. So our fuel expense was actually a little bit higher in June than it was in May, but I kind of looked at it and really most, if not all of that difference in fuel expense was because of, getting that 11th truck on the road. It had been sitting for all of May. And it started halfway through June. So then you've got another truck essentially that is, that we're buying fuel for in June than we were in May. And that's really, I think, the majority of that difference in fuel. Mm-hmm. So the percentage of revenue is roughly the same. I think it was 27 versus 29%.
Okay. But the absolute number
went up, but it was because of that truck that was sitting got back on the road.
Okay. So for obvious reasons. All right. Excellent. Any other numbers you want to talk about, or you feel like that kind of covers it?
That kind of really covers it. Like I said, the P&L for the most part was nothing really stuck out.
So this might actually be a great month then for people to go to Haulin Assets LLC and pull up that P&L report and see what it sounds like a pretty normal month looks like.
Yeah.
There are a lot of months where you're like, hey, we had to buy 18,000 tires or whatever. Yeah. So this is out of whack. This is a little bit strange, but it sounds like this is a pretty standard month.
It is.
So this would be a good one to check out and save, put it in your folder and then start to compare with what we do in other months. So
for sure.
Okay. Excellent. Chris, are you ready? Now that we're done with numbers, are you ready for some listener questions?
I'm ready.
And comments? So there are a few that came in on YouTube, and I'll don't worry, I'm not springing anything horribly onerous on you. But here's one from Donald. Donald Romano says, "Good luck with your academy. Miss hearing from you as a dispatcher here, but I'm sure you're very busy." First of all, appreciate that, Donald, and hope you go check out the academy. But also, Chris, I assume that dispatching is not a subject we're going to stop talking about. Just because Haulin Assets Academy is around now, right? It'll still be something that comes up.
It'll definitely be something that comes up. Don's he's one of our drivers.
Oh, okay, there you go.
That's why he misses me, because I'm not the one that's talking to him every day anymore.
Right.
So hi, Don. But yeah, it's definitely like dispatching is such an integral part of a trucking business, and finding loads and where you're getting your loads is so important that it'll definitely be a subject that we continue to talk about.
Okay. This one comes from Smooth Operator 83,
there you go.
Which now I got to put on my FM radio voice. Smooth Operator 83 asks, "What's your MOS?"
Oh, so that's military.
Mm.
So my MOS, so when I was enlisted, was a 12 Bravo, which is a combat engineer.
Okay.
And then when I commissioned as an officer, I like the engineer, so I stayed an engineer. And as an officer, it's a little bit more broad. As an enlisted guy, 12 Bravo, combat engineer, and it's very specific what you do. Or you could be a 12 Whiskey, which is a carpenter, or a 12 November, which is a heavy equipment operator, manager.
Right.
And so you kind of more specialize in certain things. Whereas as an officer, I can work with a combat engineer organization. I can work with a construction organization, and I've kind of done a little bit of everything.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Final question, Chris. This one comes from Dolphing. I don't know. Whatever. It says, "How can I work for Haulin Assets?" There's a great
Shoot
question.
Shoot me an email, and let's talk. We like having drivers in the hopper for when we lose one. So yeah. Shoot me an email, chris@haulinassetslllc.com.
There you go. All right. So. That is a great question, especially, if you want to drive and you're in the Salt Lake area. Absolutely. So send us an email. Chris, I think we're good for today, unless you got any other pearls of wisdom to offer. Otherwise, we can leave it there.
I'm all out of pearls.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'm going to leave all those jokes on the table, and we will see you all next time.
See you then.